Welcome. You're listening to the Good Girls Don't podcast with Ashley Ray
and Verity Mansfield.
This is the podcast where we smash those rules that we've been taught to follow both as men and women and burn the damn rule book. We're tackling the big issues and the issues nobody wants to talk about, and we'll be fiercely feminist about it.
This podcast is about inspiration, education, compassion, and being the change that you need to see in this world. This podcast is for the trailblazers, the freedom fighters, and the soul igniters, and all the women just like you who are ready to break the good girl rules and be heard.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of Australia and its First Nations people on which this podcast is produced and consumed. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.
Get ready for the revolution. It's coming to you now. It's coming to you now. You're gonna sing revolution. And they'll never bring us down. No, they'll never bring us down.
Hello, Verity.
Hello, Ashley.
Excited for another episode?
I'm so excited about today's episode.
I know you are, because we were looking forward to recording this for ages, even though it was probably only a few weeks. But who did we sit down with?
We sat down with the absolutely inspirational Dr. Lorel Mayberry, who is a sexologist and lecturer at the Department of Sexology at Curtin University in Perth.
Ooh, fancy.
Really, she's absolutely amazing. And she's been involved in the area of sexuality education for more than 3 decades.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and while she studies and lectures, while she lectures at Curtin University, in between, she also travels to Northern Thailand, working in partnership with a hill tribe group in this amazing, and it really is such an amazing foundation called Borderless Friendship. And Lorel heads the West Australian branch of that, the Borderless Friendship WA, which is a non-profit group that was started over 10 years ago. And she goes to these hill tribe communities in Northern Thailand, and she works with children who are most vulnerable to the shocking practice of sex trafficking.
And that's a topic we'd really rather not talk about, but because this is the Good Girls Don't podcast, we did decide to talk about it. So
yeah, and I think what most interesting comes up is this idea of sex trafficking. We usually associate it maybe to adults, or we know that there's a sex trade, in Thailand, and we tend to think it's really the sex trade that goes on in front of our eyes, with all the things that go on in Bangkok and things like that, and in the bars. And it's not. This is a completely hidden sex trade. And I think the statistics that Lorel gave us was that there is 50 to 60,000 children who are sold into the sex trade, or who are currently in the sex trade in Thailand at this moment. And I think that is absolutely horrific.
It really was. And this interview really, oh my God, it shone a light on so many things we'd rather sweep under the rug and be good girls and not ever talk about or look at or think about. But we brought it out and we learned some pretty amazing stuff. What was the biggest takeaway for you for this?
I think it was the fact that, Lorel doesn't just go there and help to raise money to educate these children as they're, the biggest way to get them out or protect them from the sex trade and the drug trade. We're talking about little girls who are kidnapped and who are sold over the border. We're talking about, children, including little boys as well, who get, forced into drug trafficking, and who will get shot if they're caught, like as a child. We're talking about little girls who may only go home to die of AIDS. Like once they're kidnapped or lost into the sex trade, their families might never see them again until it's death, until, they come home to be buried. And so, you know, I love the fact that there's this amazing foundation, and it's set up in my home state, WA, of Borderless Friendship WA, who are raising money, and they're also raising money to have these children sponsored. A lot of these children do not have parents or come from homes where the parents, you know, are involved in, you know, with drug addiction and things like that, and can't look after their children. And they manage to have these children sponsored for their education and for their entire, you know, ability to live. And I love that, but it's more than that. I didn't realize the extent of work that Borderless Friendship WA does and how empowering it is. So, you know, they've got this amazing foundation where they're going to Thailand, Northern Thailand, to the Hill Tribe people, and they're actually helping them to create, you know, sustainable, independent communities where these Hill Tribe people can actually start to thrive and start to become their own community. You know, where they can grow vegetables and slaughter pigs, where they're learning life skills, where they're getting educated about sexuality, self-worth, where their culture is being brought back to them and supported and celebrated. You know, there's women's groups, there's, you know, they help them to create mini economies. And, you know, it's not about just a charity like handing over money, that they're helping these people to build their own community, to stand on their own feet. And that is just amazing.
Isn't it just one of those things where you're just so in awe of it, and you're like, oh my God, all the feels.
Yes. Yeah, it is so cool. You know, they're not just helping the children, they're helping all the members in these communities. And I think one thing I didn't realize either was when we're talking about the Hill Tribes, these are people who are not citizens of Thailand. They've escaped to Thailand from all sorts of atrocities from, you know, the neighbouring countries, and they are not recognised by the Thai government. They have no identity. They don't have access to education. They don't have access to a health system. They don't have access to, you know, to medicine. You know, that they are nobodies. They don't exist in terms of a government. They have no identity. So I love the fact as well that a part of what this foundation is doing is also helping these people to create their own identity, I guess, on a personal level, but also to help them access and to, you know, submit paperwork to the government so that they can become a somebody.
Absolutely. So they get things like healthcare and education, the same things that a Thai citizen is, you know, I suppose you could almost equate it to like what we get in Australia. Like if you're a citizen, you get access to Medicare and Centrelink, and you know, you get a
free
lot
hospital.
You get a lot of benefits by being an Australian citizen. But if
education,
you don't have that, suddenly life is really expensive. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was the fact that it actually doesn't take a lot to make a huge impact. You know,
it doesn't.
Stay tuned to listen, because it really doesn't take much to make a huge impact and to just change someone's life.
Yeah, and I think the other really important part as well is this was not a sad, depressing interview. Like, we went into this thinking, oh my God, what are we going to hear? And it
I was fully prepared with tissues. I was fully prepared with tissues going, this is going to be sad, this is going to be horrible. Actually, it was so uplifting. It was
amazing, absolutely amazing, and so joyful, and you just want to get involved. It was probably one of the most joyful episodes I think we've done.
Awesome. So, guys, stay tuned. We're going to hear from Dr. Lorel Mayberry in just a minute.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Lorel Mayberry. We've been so excited, and as we've been talking about this interview up and coming, we've had so many people messaging us and asking when is this episode happening so that they can listen to it. So we're so excited to have you here. We are so grateful for you taking time out to join us, and we just can't wait to really share this episode with people and share what you do. So if you can just start, like, taking us all back to the beginning, how did Borderless Friendship WA actually start?
Well, my friendship with Promote the Hill Tribe leader. He's actually the leader of all Hill Tribe people, and there's anything up to 1.5 to 2 million Hill Tribe people. Well, my friendship with him goes back 20 odd years, and I came up. My son got married 10 years ago to a Thai woman. They live in Perth, but they happened to have their wedding in Thailand, and I'd always promised him if I came to Thailand, I would come visit. So that's 10 years ago. And what I realised, he had left this large organisation, sort of like the equivalent of World Vision. He was the head in Thailand, really not happy that the money was going where it should go. And he had started with 9 other Hill Tribe leaders. They had started Borderless Friendship Foundation. And that's why we're Borderless Friendship Western Australia, to support their work. So it's totally run by Hill Tribe leaders, male, female, to support the work, to enhance their community. And our particular work is about enhancing the lives of the children.
And can you just explain for us as well what is meant by the term Hill Tribe?
Well, the Hill Tribe people are people that have come over hundreds and hundreds of years from neighbouring countries, usually to escape terrible discrimination or conflict. So, for example, Promote family have come from, even beyond China. But at the moment, there's the last 50 years, really, Lahu people have been fleeing from Myanmar, from the old name is Burma, and that's our neighbours. And I've got to say they're pretty awful neighbours.
Wow.
And Hill Tribe people, especially Lahu people, have been really badly discriminated since the communist regime came in 50-odd years ago. Now, Shan people, so a whole nother population of people, and by terrible, I mean, their villages burnt, their people taken, women raped, children, stolen, and they run to get away. And often the children are separated from parents, or the parents have been killed in conflict along the border, and the children come into Thailand, and if they're fortunate, somehow they find their way to one of our 7 hostels scattered about 300 square kilometres.
And I've heard this about the Hill Tribe communities, where they really are treated straight away as second-class citizens, and where, they are at risk already just by, being, I guess, a part of that Hill Tribe community.
Absolutely. So there's different Hill Tribe people. There's Aka, Lahu, and then there's yellow Lahu, chalet Lahu, black Lahu, red Lahu. There's many different Hmong, Karen people. So there's many Lisu, many different tribes, and depending on where they've come from as to what sort of conflict and what sort of troubles they've faced.
Yeah.
But the biggest issue for them is that they don't have Thai citizenship. So they are living here without Thai ID. And without ID, they are isolated, they cannot travel, they cannot vote, they cannot legally get access to healthcare, education, etc. So we're talking, 1.5 million people, and probably a half of those do not have ID, and of course most of the children. So for us, the major part is keeping them safe and keeping them at school, because that's their best pathway to Thai ID.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably won't understand how crucial it is, this concept of having citizenship. I've spent time in China and talking to a lot of the factory workers, and, we all know that, with the Chinese government, there's these, rules about only having, one-child policy, and they're allowed to have other children, but those children are not recognised by the state. So there is no, like you said, there's no identification. These children are literally like, they do not exist. They're nobodies. they cannot be educated, they can't access health. You know, it's not like we're in the Western world where if our child is sick, we can run to an emergency, you know, hospital and seek, you know, immediate medical help. That lack of citizenship, that lack of identification just robs them of so much, of almost everything. You know, all their basic human rights are so caught up with this, you know, inability of being able to be identified as a citizen. And that's just horrific as it is, let alone what you're saying, that the effects of not having citizenship or being recognised by the state. You know, can you tell us a bit more as well? So what happens when you, so you've actually been creating hostels or homes for these children?
Well, yes, and you just mentioned about China, and that impacts our kids as well, because the one-child policy. So what tended to happen is that the girl babies were killed. So there's a predominance of males in Thailand. So often they will actually come, there will be traders working up in these remote villages, and they trade in children. And because they have no ID, they literally can disappear, and there's so much corruption with the police. We work closely with the army, and the army is aligned to the king, and the army is not corrupt. The army is a friend of Hill Tribe people, as is the king, especially the previous king, Rama IX. And so with China, to fill this gap, they are stealing girls from villages and taking them to China because there's not enough girls there to marry.
Yeah, it's so true, because I knew when I was in China that a lot of the factory girls were leaving the farms, and they didn't want a lot to do with the men in China, because these women were, you know, learning English. They were free and not tied to the farm, so they could go off and have this crazy sense of freedom in these cities, working in factories, earning money. They would work for 2 years in the factories, pay their parents off of what they deemed they owed them for 2 years. And then these girls have this amazing sense of freedom in China, where they own themselves and they can get an apartment, and they've got amazing access to clothes and shoes at the factories. And they are saying, we don't want to go back into the country and marry the boys. They're not good enough for us. So it's absolutely fascinating what is going to happen with these kind of societies. And like you said, you know, this idea of then, you know, Chinese people in the male community sort of stealing women and young girls from other communities is horrendous. Like, it's a massive abuse of human rights.
I had no idea this was even happening.
Which is why we love this conversation.
So much of the problem is not the tourists come to Thailand, and most tourists go down south, so they go to Phuket or they go somewhere like that. And that's it's like another world up in the north for a start. It's just so stunning, the forests, the mountains, and there's whole other culture, there's whole language. But for Hill Tribe people, they are not Thai. So it's a very big thing for people to understand when people think, well, Thailand, you know, there's education, there's condoms, there's, you know, all of these things. But these people are Hill Tribe people. They are not Thai. So all the things that are set up, for example, in some of the villages I work, 25% of the people have HIV or AIDS. There is no medication. There is no condoms. There has been no antivirals, for example, things that in, you know, most parts of Africa, that sort of stuff is available. On the course in Australia, it's free. So, you know, the major, not only is the issues with sex trafficking, there is things just around where I am at the moment. I'm based in Chiang Dao, which is about an hour and a half out of Chiang Mai, north of Chiang Mai, and then we go and work up on the border. We've got 4 hostels up there. But there's these little tin sheds that you see along the road as we're driving along. And through the day, you don't even notice them. And then at night, they've got some bright lights. Now, they are karaoke sheds. So when we think karaoke, we think, drunk, silly people singing badly. But up here, it's just a pseudonym for sex. So you just see 3 or 4 trucks or something, and you can get anything. If so they know someone's going to keep calling back and they want a 6-year-old boy or a 10-year-old girl or a whatever. So that's the problem, that it's hidden, and it's hidden even, tourists think of Phuket or Pattaya or somewhere like that with the beach and the sex workers but this is the hidden problem up here that the United Nations estimates between 50 and 60,000 children in Thailand are working in the sex trade, and most of those, the fodder for that is Hill Tribe children.
That is so awful.
Yes.
Yeah.
One child is too much. One child being forced, to do whatever in these places, let alone that volume of children. So the biggest thing we can do is keep them safe in safe accommodation, because there is no schools up in many of these mountain communities. There's maybe a little kindy, and so there's nothing for them to do. And if they stay in the villages, there's so many amphetamine labs. We actually just went right along the border to another place yesterday, and you can actually see the amphetamine labs. They're so blatant. And then I happened to be then that we saw on the internet that they'd just got 50, however many kilos of amphetamines they found about 2 kilometres from here in a cave. And that's the issue, that there's so many amphetamines coming in from Myanmar, which then come into Australia too, of course. But the Hill Tribe people get caught up in the carrying of them, or the children get exploited to carry them. And if they get caught, in Myanmar, they just get shot. There is no trials. And because they don't exist,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So many of our kids, one of our beautiful girls who's now at vocational education doing chef, her mum got 15 years for carrying, probably 2 teaspoons of amphetamines down the hill.
So there could be strict penalties too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. So not only are the parents quite often addicts, because there's no hope, there's massive amounts of suicide. We just had last year 2 16-year-old boys in their village because it was hang themselves, because it's so sad if there's no education. So unfortunately, they come to the hostels, and before we promoted being supporting one tiny little roadside hostel for nearly 25 years, he and his family. So we support those that have already existed, but now we have also our own. So we have control of those, and the conditions are amazing, and we're absolutely not just about accommodating. It's not like just a hostel. It's about life skills. Of course, my background's sexuality education, so lots about empowerment and gender. They learn how to, grow rice. We have acres and acres of vegetables, and so everything they do is a skill, and they run everything. Youth committees run it. We have minimum staff, and we really don't need staff. These kids from 3 to 18 are just amazing. When you think an Australian kid, often, they're 7 years old and they don't get their own breakfast. These kids not only cook, clean, prepare food, grow food, do the pigs, kill the pigs, just everything. They're completely self-sustaining, but sponsorship is really for school lunches. School lunch is about $1, and that is just too much for parents. Parents are earning maybe $12 a day if they're earning anything. So our help keeping their kids at school, giving them uniforms, helping them, just helping support them through school and helping them with proper jobs or vocational education is really what is going to turn around, just like it, will for Aboriginal people in Australia.
Yeah.
So their own people supporting their own people getting into teaching jobs, medicine, mechanics, everything. That's what will change the environment for Hill Tribe people.
I think this is why it is so powerful what you're doing, because you're going into these communities and you're actually creating a community for them where there's this agriculture. Like you said, they're learning how to farm, how to actually, sustain themselves, how to actually even like you were saying, like with the life skills and the sexuality and self-worth and education on top of that, and giving them, career opportunities, pathways where there is hope, for them if they can get access to this. Is it a program? Like, how do you describe it?
Well, no, we have any effective community development has just many, many prongs to it. So we also support culture. Like last night, we've got a person who's been here, my friend's been here for 10 days and has done wonderful work with the kids and played with the kids. So they always thank you. They love to dance and sing. So till 10 o'clock last night, they were in cultural clothes, so they do cultural dance and they do rap. So keeping culture is very important. We also have microcredit for women's groups, and so we now have women's groups that before were competing against women, competing to sell their vegetables on the roadside, which they have to do. Now are working together. They've got a noodle shop, they've got a petrol station, they're selling spring water, and that's changed. So now that community, they've got roofs on their houses, they've got wood on the side of it. They've got concrete floors for their toilets. So if you came to visit, you'd think, wow, this is a poor village. But actually, I can see the change in 10 years. It's just miraculous. They've got motorcycles, and because they've got some surety, they can afford to send their kids to the local fantastic school. So wherever the kids can go to school, we support that school, but often there is no school, so the kids have to come here to live in safety so they can go to school. But most of the kids here, for example, 122 kids here, probably half of those kids have no parents, maybe just a grandparent who is very old and poor and can't really look after them. And so these kids are here, and it's just changed their lives. They are family. They are treated like family. It's positive. We're very careful about who comes here. We never tell people where any of our places are located, so they have to come through us. People have to know, but they are welcome to sponsor, to come and visit. We have fantastic accommodation at many of the hostels. So we have Aka Hilton up near Chakrai, so it's a beautiful Aka hut on a pond, and there's 70 kids there. So it's a wonderful opportunity for people to see the real Hill Tribe culture, not tourists, it's nothing like what a Thai tourist company. It's run by Hill Tribe people for Hill Tribe people.
That's just absolutely amazing. And I love this idea that people can come and actually experience, the reality. And, I've spoken to my children quite often about how they're so lucky and they're so privileged in Australia, and they're really like in the top 8%, 10%.
1%.
1% of, the world's population at this level.
Yeah. That's right.
They do not understand. And I think to have opportunities, where people can completely step into, a whole different life and really understand and appreciate what they've got in their own backyard is
come and bring your children.
Powerful. So we can actually bring children to come and visit.
Yes.
Because I'm talking about this with my children. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this talk today.
I'm sensing a trip soon, Verity.
I am. I'm totally like, If Dr. Mayberry says children can come, we're going.
People, we've just had some people here from Canada with their 3 children, a 9-year-old and 2 11-year-olds. Totally. Here's these kids. I think they had never got breakfast in their life. You know, they barely made their bed. And suddenly they're seeing how these children, with the jobs they do, they get up at 5:30. Before they go to school, they've got their clothes ironed. They've washed their own clothes, hand washed their clothes. Plus, they've prepared the food. These kids realise, and they just loved it because the kids are so friendly. Your kids will be over there with them. That's it. You can have a holiday because your kids will be. The kids just love it. They had such a good time. So it's very, very safe. And we take you up to the border. We take you up to the other hostels. But actually, where we're based here at Leadership Home, we've been very fortunate to have an excellent supporter from Canada who really, the man who helped produce that video, the There's No Monday, he is in that, Brian Rook, and he has supported the beautiful buildings here. And he comes to visit. He comes to Thailand often, and he comes to visit. And he's seen what we do, and he's a huge supporter. So these buildings where the children are exceptional. Then we stay pretty much in between, which is a hill tribe business called Changdao Base Camp. And you can Google that. And we're at the base of the beautiful mountain, Doi Nang and Doi Luang. Doi is mountain, and that's the 3rd highest mountain in Thailand. So we look to the mountains. We're surrounded by beautiful hills. It's paradise. It really is stunning. Yes.
Wow, that's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
Excuse me while I'm over here picking up my jaw. This happens every interview, but this is such I mean, you're talking about changes that, you know, in Australia, I would, you know, the fact that you have a concrete floor for your toilet, I'd look at that and that's just so standard. And to not have that, like,
not have a toilet.
Yeah.
I just went to the other day. There are 100 people there, and there are 2 toilets. 2 toilets. Wow. The rest, they just go into the jungle, which is complete, you know, is not hygienic when the amount of people that are there. So we're working with Rotary and getting them toilets, but just the basic, they have no running water. They have no electricity. They live in grass huts, bamboo huts, and, you know, we've now got their children are sponsored by a wonderful person in Canada, and their children all go to school. We've vaccinated their dogs. We've sterilised many dogs, and unfortunately many were so sick. But we try, and we have a health initiative. We have a medical fund, which again desperately needs funds, because for our children to get access to medical care, now Promote, our leader, he has enabled them to get medical fund. Heaven help anyone who stops our kids going to the hospital. Like we had a boy with a broken arm yesterday. He did a backflip and broke his arm. So he's now down in Chiang Mai with his carer. But that's the cost. The transport to get to the hospital, the food, because if the kids are in hospital, unless they have a carer or someone looking after them, they aren't clean. They don't get food. So that costs money. And if you're sick on a remote mountain, there is no car in your village, and you've got a child that's unconscious or a child in pain, to put that child on a motorbike and come down a mountain for 3 hours. So they have to hire a car. So that's the sort of thing our medical fund helps with. So we have a medical fund, we have education, we have cultural, we have microcredit operating with 700 families managed by Hill Tribe women. They are the accountants trained by Promote's wonderful wife Yadao, who heads up a Hill Tribe credit union. You name it, they do it. So it's not like they want handouts. They want some support. You give a little bit, and they just do so much with it. They're remarkable, remarkable, remarkable people.
I feel so inspired by this. It's
It is. It's absolutely, it's insanely beautiful and so empowering. And I love this idea as well. Like, so many people say that, you know, we have issues in our own country. And it's like, yeah, of course, Australia has its own issues. But if we don't help, you know, like you're saying, this borderless friendship, like if we don't help people, you know, all over the world, who will? Like, if we're living in the top 1% of the population, you know, people in Thailand, if they can't help their own communities, or they don't even see these hill tribe people as part of their Thai community, who is going to help these children? It has to come from outside their communities. They don't have the funds or the resources to do this alone. And I think, you know, as white privileged people, we so need to step up and be so much more open-hearted, and just to give on the causes that pull on our hearts.
Yeah,
you know, and to take action.
I'm not a rich person, and the people, the vast majority of our sponsors, 400 who sponsor 400 plus kids, they are also not rich people, but they have usually come, or they're involved with us, or they've got a friend who is, or they're, you know, my students from university or something like that. We have many students who sponsor a child, and they are living, you know, I know how tough it is for them, but they say they can give up a cup of coffee a week, you know, or they can give up something they really recognise, and every cent we raise comes up here. We don't take fees. We don't, no one's paying me. No one pays my airfare. All our volunteers completely pay everything when they're here. So we just have a membership fee if people wish to pay $30 a month. $30 a year, and that really covers our insurance and our post office box, and that's really all the fees. Every other bit of money we raise through all our hard work, selling handicraft, etc., comes up to support our work. So I think that's also a very unique thing about us is that
really
we're not like, we don't take 47% of the money on admin and people flying around, you know, supported by an organisation to fly. No one does that. We all pay for ourselves.
And this is why, I mean, there's so many, you know, amazing foundations and charities, but this is why yours just sang to me so much. And I think it's that level of generosity, that level of commitment and dedication by the people who are part of this foundation, that they do this for free. They are not getting paid. The money that raised is going to these children and families who need every single cent. And I don't know, I've hardly come across any other foundation that has this much transparency, who gives as much as what, you know, your foundation does. And I think this is what people are looking for when they want to sponsor a child. They're so aware that 80% of the money that they sponsor through other organisations goes into admin, and the child might only end up with 4 to 10 or maybe 20% if they're actually really lucky. You know, and I just love the fact that this foundation, you know, Borderless Friendship WA, is so completely honest and so completely transparent and so 100% dedicated, you know, to these kids and their families. And that, I think, in itself, and like you said, you pay your own flights, you pay your own food.
This is my holiday. I work at university by choice. I get paid when I lecture, but then I don't get paid for the rest of the year. So 6 months a year, I'm not paid, and most of that time is spent up here. At the moment, I'm taking photos, talking with all our children to make sure they're there, photos and drawings that they've done for their sponsor. We're now collating it. We have a wonderful team back in Perth that I then send all the drawings to. And your mum, Verity, you was the person that the last few years, she knows what a huge task that is. So we keep track of every child, and if a child is not in the hostel, when I go up because I come maybe 3 times a year for sometimes 2 months, we want to know where's the child gone, and we then understand. Often maybe a mum has moved somewhere else, or sometimes the older ones have got married, or there's a real reason. And if not, we track them down. We find them. We are not happy for one child to disappear without us knowing exactly. So people know, don't mess with our kids. Don't mess. The teachers know too that we are tracking. Are they going up to the next grade? How are they going at school? How can we support? So sometimes there's, in some of the schools, quite a bit of complacency. They're Thai teachers, and they're often reluctant to be working in the communities they're working. So that's a whole nother layer. But we go in and we support the schools. We do a whole lot of different initiatives to make it as effective and as sustainable, and they're about equity as we can.
Yeah, and I think this is why it was so important. Like, I heard obviously about Borderless Friendship WA through my mom, who's, on your board, and she was just, what she had to tell me was just jaw-droppingly amazing of the work that's being done, and yet I didn't know anything about it. And, unless she'd said something, I wouldn't know this foundation existed. And one of the reasons for this podcast is that we are, so much about celebrating amazing, fierce women like yourself who are doing this off their own backs without, getting paid anything in return, and who are just giving so selflessly in order to create, joy, love, life, education, empowerment for people who have zero access to it. I just feel like, human beings like yourself, like, we need to know more about, people like you and the amazing work that you're doing. And not just, overseas, but, you're doing the work here as well by educating, white privileged people that they can be something, they can give to something more, they can be a part of something bigger than the small lives that we do live here.
Well, it's not just me. I've got to admit, it's certainly not selfless. What I get out of it is tenfold what I put in. It is such a privilege to work with these communities. I have friends. I have, especially the women's groups, the kids. I've watched these kids grow up. I've been with these kids now for 10 years, and to watch the change, to watch them go from scared, no hope, to now they're at, vocational education, following their dream, or at university, or getting a great job at the municipality, whatever it is, it's so rewarding. So, and I don't do it without a huge team in Australia, well, actually around the world now. We have sponsors and supporters from around the world, and loads of people come and visit and really give and put in so much when they're here, then go back and share. So I thank you for taking that time and put me on your schedule so we can educate more people, because it's such a beautiful thing. It's not a negative thing. People say, oh, aren't you scared, or don't you get sick, or I never get sick up here. I avoid mosquitoes in Australia. I don't want to get Ross River virus or whatever. It's the same up here. It's just common sense. The food is so healthy and nutritious. We eat organic, beautiful meals. Every single meal is cooked and lovingly prepared for. We are totally spoiled. So it's not like it's a huge hardship, and sleeping in a hut with the animals around, and it's an absolute delight. So I encourage people to come up, to look at our website, send me an email. You can get those details. I'll send you visitor information. We have Hill Tribe people who will be your guide. They take care of everything. You just have to arrive in Chiang Mai. Tuck, my beautiful Thai son, will pick you up. They look after you. They take you everywhere, and then you are given amazing food. And really, so if you want an honest Hill Tribe experience, not through some Thai tour company that really can't go where we can go, please come and see for yourself.
So just to help our listeners understand, what are the ways that they can get involved? So they can sponsor a child?
Yes, definitely. $40 a month.
Yeah.
Or $60 a month for the university vocational, the ones that, because they need that much extra. They're out of the hostels. We have a safe place for them to live in Chiang Mai, but just to get their transport might be, nearly $1 a day. So there and back. So sponsorship for them is $60, but for kindy, primary and secondary school children, it's $40 a month. And as we said, every cent of that goes either to the child, the older children have accounts. Our promote's wife, who's a Hill Tribe credit union person, she has helped them all. They have bank accounts, so the money goes directly to them, and the younger children, it goes to the hostel to ensure they've got uniforms, they go to school, we transport them to school. So plus they have to grow and produce and everything else to add, to make it sustainable. So sponsorship or giving donations for scholarships for our older kids is really important. But all that is on our website.
Yeah. And I just want to highlight, like, if $40 a month for a primary and secondary school,
That's so
education,
cheap.
that's $480 a year.
Yes.
Now, I'm a single parent on a part-time wage. I know that I could probably find that money. So, this is just a call out to say this is just so accessible. It's so affordable. It's so doable for people. $480, that's one term that it would cost my daughter to do surfing for one term of year. University students, $720. Again, like, that's not a huge sum of money in terms of, what it costs us to go to university, which is, $25,000 for a degree. So just putting into, I guess, a snapshot what that actually means per year. It's only $480 for a child or $720 for a university student. Which is really quite amazing that they can do so much with that little amount of money.
Yeah, but I do understand, things are tough in Australia too, and I guess that's why we produce a video, and it's called There Is No Monday, because in our schools, the point of that is that kids can go at home on the weekend and maybe there's no food or it's not too stable, but there is school, there is that backstop, there is, they can get breakfast, they can get school notice if kids don't have food. Here, there is no backstop. If they're living with grandma and grandma doesn't have a rice paddy and grandma has no family, or the family are in jail, or the family have died, there is nothing. There is no social security. There is no payment if you're unemployed. There is no pension for Hill Tribe people because, of course, if they don't exist. So this is the thing. There is no backstop for these kids. But we do understand, that's still finding $40. I had a beautiful, beautiful person I met. Her name's Jane, and she's got 2 children, 2 young boys, and she told them about sponsorship, and she said, we are going to sponsor 2 boys like you. And they got so excited, and they saw the kids' pictures, and the boys said, Mum, we'll do extra jobs. Can we sponsor another child? So these kids are now doing extra, raising more. We have a school in Melbourne, a very low socioeconomic school, and they collect money, I think near the canteen or something, and every month there's $40 or more to pay for their sponsor child. So many schools and communities do it in different ways. Yeah.
I think that's the point as well. There's always ways, that we in Australia can create these extra funds. Even if the kids, I know that our local primary school, there was one child that, was really sort of compassionate towards animals. And so she set up her own cake store with permission from the school so she could raise some money one lunchtime and donate the money to, I think it was like the RSPCA.
Beautiful.
But
Yes.
there's always things to do, or if families want to join together and 3 families want to
Yes. Yes.
sponsor a child, or 4 families want to put in $100 a year, you know what I mean? Like there's so many ways that people can step up. It doesn't have to just fall on one person to find $480 or $720. Whether a school sponsors, whether a group of people or neighbours sponsor. There's so many different, or businesses. If there's businesses that would love to sponsor a child, there's so many ways that we in Australia have these opportunities to say, do you know what, I might actually have a solution for this. We might actually be able to find a way, of being able to help and make a difference in this world. And the difference that it is for us and the effort it is for us to maybe come up with that money might not be as big as, it'd be so much smaller than the massive impact it's going to have on the other side, with the Hill Tribe children and this amazing work that you're doing in this foundation.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much and thank you to the listeners. For someone who's listened to this whole podcast, that's a huge effort. So I really appreciate it. So thank you both, Ashley and Verity. Thank you.
Thank you for just bringing so much more love into this world and just for helping other people to become more aware, I guess, of the privilege in their own life and the appreciation and gratitude they can have what they're experiencing, and also for maybe helping other people to step up. And I know so many people that are saying, in my own backyard, there must be something more. We go to work, we earn money, we go on holidays, like life's nice, but there's got to be something more. And I feel like this kind of work is what gives us something more. It gives us a purpose, it gives us a reason, it gives us passion. Like you were saying, that beautiful payoff and making a difference, and knowing that you are being an effective change maker in this world is so powerful. So thank you so much for all the inspiration. We'll put all the links in the show notes as well so that you can stalk Borderless Friendship WA and you can support them. They have a website, which is www.borderlessfriendship.org. They are on Instagram as well, so we'll put the show notes, the link for that in there. And
a very active Facebook.
A very active Facebook, yep. Yep. So we've got that as well, BFWA on Facebook. And we'll put all those links in so that people can find you and learn so much more. And, like Ashley and I always say, this podcast isn't just about listening, it's also about taking action. So whether the action is, supporting this foundation on Instagram, whether it's supporting Borderless Friendship through Facebook, please do that. If it's talking to your children about it, we'll also put the YouTube link in there. Maybe your action is watching the YouTube link, about this foundation, and talking about it. Maybe your action is sharing this episode with other people who are interested in trying to find something more in their lives to give to. Or if you are fierce enough, like myself, my children, we're definitely going to be taking a trip to well, with you, hopefully. We will document it, and my children will be so up for this, and I know it will give them so much back in their own lives, and even just to document it. They love giving talks at school, so I can see they're already talking about setting up things and ways they can earn money to support this foundation. So we will definitely be heading over, hopefully in the next 12 months.
Fantastic.
And, commit to this and take action in a really big way so that, not just for ourselves, but, we can use all the photographs and things that we take and, bring it back and share it in our own communities as well. because
Hannah.
I just love it.
Hannah has been up, and she's been fantastic because she's such a beautiful photographer. So many of Hannah's photos, and she made a great video about our work, our sexuality education weekend for the kids. So Hannah is another person. I mean, she's been up twice now, so she knows firsthand.
Well, we definitely will commit to taking a trip and experiencing this for ourselves and seeing how we can give back. Thank you so much for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, if you want to continue this conversation, head over to our Facebook page and be part of the revolution. You can find us at Good Girls Don't Podcast on Facebook. Please note we cannot create change alone. Your support, likes, comments, shares, and iTunes reviews will help us to give a voice to the insanely inspirational women and the controversial issues that we discuss.
If you'd like to be a part of our podcast, or if you have an issue that you have a burning desire for us to bring into the light, please contact us. With fierceness, Ashley
and Verity.
Get ready for the revolution.